Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Um, we're just letting folks in as they
Is
as
going
they
on.
roll in. And there's Sharon. We got you,
Oh,
Sharon. We
finally.
can hear you.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
I think we've got folks from a few different cohorts joining us today, so
So is
feel
this
free
the
to
one
just,
that you and
yeah,
sorry, is this the where I got a bit confused about
yeah,
who Narnia facility? A different one.
You've
this
frozen
is the
up,
one.
Jeff.
This is
Okay.
the one. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to jump into the Zoom chat and introduce yourselves or that sort of thing, because I think we've got folks from a couple different countries. We'll get going in just a minute. And yeah, welcome to the Emergency Resilience Workshop for NAP3. So excited to be here with you. Hi there, Robert. Nice to see you. Hey, Alex. I don't think I've met you before.
Hey, Alex, it's Shani here. We should chat after the end of this and make a time if you want to.
Uh, Feels like maybe we can get going. So let's kick this off. And Savannah, has unfortunately had something in the last minute that has come up, so she won't be able to join us today, but she has asked me to record it to the cloud like the other workshops. So I'll just start that now and then we can dive in. Okay. Welcome everyone. This is a workshop on emergency resilience and building that into our neighborhood and community building efforts. My name is Mel Chan and I'll sort of be facilitating the workshop today. And we've also got Shani Graham joining us on the workshop too, to be able to share her story. Stoked to be here with you all. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country, which is something that we do here in Australia. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm calling in today from the lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people, which is Jara country. They have stewarded the lands and the seas and the animals of this earth for tens of thousands of years. And one of the things that I'm calling into this workshop is just the ways in which we're seeking to weave connectivity and liveliness and life and sustainability into our communities and neighborhoods can be aided by drawing a lot of inspiration from the lessons of our traditional owners. So that's my acknowledgement. I also want to name that sovereignty here on this land was never ceded. So this always was and always will be Aboriginal lands. Welcome. If you all feel like you want to pop in a little bit about where you're dialing in from, feel free to do that in the chat. But I thought that we could just kick off with a little bit of a check-in round, seeing as we're a nice small group today. Justina, I don't know if you are on the call. It seems like the call, but their note takers are, which is a new dynamic that I'm learning to work with on Zoom. But Justina, if you're sort of able to be actively engaged in this workshop, could you just give me some sort of emoji or come off mute or something like that? It'll help me with the breakout rooms. Okay. Cool. Did you say something, Shani?
I asked her to put a video on, so I don't think she's there.
Got it. Yep. Okay, great. Yeah, so with our check-in round, I thought that it would just be really nice to go around the room and just hear from one another a little bit about you and the neighborhood that you're kind of dialing in from and that you're doing some stewarding work for. Um, yeah, and sort of how you're landing into the call today. You know, it might be, I don't know what time of day it is for everyone and just what's happened in your days or what's yet to happen. It'd just be really nice to hear from you. So, whoever's ready can pop first and then just pass it on to someone else.
I can jump in.
Yeah.
I'm Robert from Paiute. That's the Paiute word, Native American for land of flowing water, Eastern California mountain range, where the water from here flows all the way to the city of Los Angeles, the longest aqueduct in the world, 300 miles. And our neighborhood group here is we're working on just having a neighborhood group, but we're focusing on a little bit of fire resiliency within a neighborhood of maybe 20, 30 houses. And 3 days ago, we had a wildfire breakout that went from 1 acre to 1,200 acres in 4 hours. And so it's it's definitely a communication point that we have, and that's what I'll be focusing on our picnics and stuff during the next month.
And who are you passing it to, Robert?
Oh, to Shani?
Hi, some of you know me already, Sharon very well. I'm over here in Perth, Fremantle, Western Australia. We have a community group around us of about 1,000 people, 370 houses. And as far as resilience building, it's probably something I think about, but most people in my community wouldn't. We're high up on a hill, there's no chance of floods, we're not in an earthquake zone, we're in quite a suburban area when it comes to bushfire. We do have a bit of bush on the edge of our area, but climate emergency kind of stuff is not foremost in people's minds. And so it's on my mind, but it's not sort of on everyone else's. So I'll share a bit more about my story later on what we've done around that. So yeah. Alex.
Hello. I'm Alex. I'm calling in from Baltimore, Maryland in the US. It's 8 p.m. for me now. I think that I live in unceded lands, the Piscataway, as far as like indigenous peoples go. I live in this neighborhood called Butcher's Hill that I actually don't know how many people, if I had to guess, it's like 1,000 as well. And we've had like a neighborhood association for long before I was here, like 40 or 50 years or something. And I've been here for like 2 years and I've gotten really involved with the neighborhood and also with just a bunch of different like social club sorts of things that I like doing. But when I think of like emergency resilience sorts of things, I think about how in Baltimore there are always homes on fire. Like it feels like any time of year, there's just always like smoke in the distance that I can see. And yeah, I know a couple of people who have like had their houses burned down, and so this is an important thing to me. Um, so with that, I'll pass it to Sharon.
Thanks, Alex. So I'm from Perth, Western Australia as well, and I'm like Shani, I'm in a suburban area, but we've been working on a community of, I'm guessing, I actually don't know how many are in my community, maybe 700 people, possibly. And fire it seems to be the theme. So I guess out of all the things that could immediately go wrong here, it's fire. We had a massive fire here earlier in the year, and just yesterday we had another big fire just across the road from us that was pretty scary. So I mean, obviously the community pulls together in those circumstances, but there's nothing very organized about it. It's more ad hoc. So yeah. And oh, I don't really want to throw to someone if they're not sure what they're doing.
Who's ready to go?
Melanie, Justina, one of you go.
Okay, so mine is Justina. I haven't changed the description. I'm living in Denmark, which is a small town in the southwest of Western Australia. We're surrounded by the forest. We also have underground water. So as far as it comes to if the elements overtake, yeah, we in a risk of the fire. And I think this so far I've been here 6 months in this place. Now I'm trying to get to know my neighborhood and also I consider that here in Australia everyone is a bit anxious about fires because I was living in Canary Islands and there are fires. They were volcanic islands and the volcanoes can erupt. But here people are more anxious about that. Over there people were more, oh yeah, that's a nature. It's kind of, you have to stand together and do it, something. But here there's so much more that actually we can prevent here. And there's so much more, as I see, to compare the two places. So much more financial support, but also tools and the knowledge than these other places. But still, people are here more afraid of those changes. Anyway, I think I don't know. I think I cover everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Justina.
Yeah.
Melanie, do you feel ready to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Got it.
My name's Melanie Redman, and I'm in Taos, New Mexico, USA. And we are in a high alpine desert at 7,000 feet above sea level, and are nestled on the edge of a valley of foothills and mountains. So fires are definitely a thing. We have our own hotshots team. Last year or the year before, we had a really bad fire that was a very unique case. It was ground mitigation clearing that actually went underground and was smoldering for all winter, and then came back up and erupted, and they found out that it had been burning the dry root systems. So the importance of nurturing our shallow aquifers has become really important lately. And I recently did a class with a friend of mine who's been kind of propagating an idea called water planting, and what that means to go from the very top of the mountains of the watershed and create little terraces so that it catches all the runoff, so that we are replenishing our shallow aquifers and our springs all the way down. And that a lot of Native American tribes that were nomadic were doing that work for a really, really long time. And he started noticing how the closest you get to bigger cities and metropolitan areas now, how dried out the cities are, and that those previous structures have essentially been kind of destroyed or lost, and that we don't really have anyone rebuilding them or nurturing them like potentially used to be, in order to keep water and keep hydration on the land. So other ways to mitigate fire and find resiliency in the community are questions that I'm definitely asking.
Amazing. I love this. This is very quickly emerging to be a little bit of a masterclass in emergency preparedness and readiness. And I also want to kind of honor our original theme around resilience and resilience building and how that gets woven into neighborhood building more generally. So thanks for that round of intros. My name is Mel. I'll share a little bit more about my story later, but I'm calling in from Castlemaine in Victoria, Australia. We're on Jarrah country, and I'm landing in like quite effervescent, quite, buzzy and curious to hear from you all. So just calling in a little bit of, maybe just a little bit of calmness and trust that I actually think we've got the wisdom in this room to have some really interesting conversations, and to be able to discover some new insights in all directions. So really appreciate that round of intros. So what we're going to do in terms of the layout or the flow of the session is we're going to spend a little bit of time in breakout rooms, just to be able to see sort of what's alive and what sort of the key themes are. You're going to hear from Shani and myself about our stories, about how various types of emergencies sort of hit our communities and how our communities were able to respond or adapt, and move towards thriving from that. I'm also like kind of keen to be able to, with this sort of as so small a group, to be able to just take the discussion where the heat is, where the discussion really wants to go, and maybe where the heat is a little bit. It seems very poignant because we're talking a lot about fire. So if we feel ready, what I would love to do is I would like to send us out into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And I want to kind of invite us to take a couple of steps back from the big climate stuff and the emergencies and those sorts of things that seem really present for folks at the moment. And I really like to invite us just to reflect on the term resilience. Like, what does that word conjure up for you, when you are thinking about it in general, when you are thinking about it, from the individual, household, neighborhood level? Like, what is this resilience building that everybody is talking about? So yeah, I invite you to have a discussion about that in your groups, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes and sort of be able to share out what we heard, so we can kind of see, what's alive in the group and go from there. Does that sound pretty good? Cool. Okay, I've got these all ready to go, so I'll send you out. Enjoy. I'll see you in 10 minutes. So welcome back. I hope you had lively discussions in your rooms. Ksenia joined me just after you all left. So we had a lively chat in our little room as well, which was really lovely. I would just love to hear from the room, like, what is like one thing, just one thing that is sitting with you from your discussion with your partner?
Do you want us to type it or say it verbally?
Let's just say it verbally. We can do that.
Okay. I was chatting with Sharon, I'm not really up to speed on the resiliency buzzword that's going around, but she said she'd been hearing it more. And so I figured it sounds like it's communication within your neighborhood group. If you can get communication going, you can solve a lot of problems, just like in anything. So you're resilient if you've got good communication channels. Is kind of I think what Sharon and I sort of agreed on.
Awesome. Cool. That's great. Sharon, maybe we can go to you. What stood out from your discussion with Robert?
I think that it's dependent on the strength of your relationships, how resilient your community is, and also that it's adaptable, so the adaptability of a community to make you resilient.
Yeah. Who wants to share next?
I was with Shani, and something that she said that stuck out to me was like resiliency or like adaptability is we bounce back from things. And like another word that I have heard is anti-fragile to kind of mean that same thing, like we get better from having things go wrong. And like because it's partly related to my work, I was thinking of the example of like the pandemic and how we like are resilient and bounce back from sort of things.
Yeah. So resiliency, that concept is about bouncing back from things. I just want to make sure that I've heard you right. And you also shared like anti-fragile is also about like how things can get better from when things go wrong. Yeah, super interesting. What about you, Shani?
Oh, that Alex did a good summary there. The only thing I'd add is I'm now starting to think sometimes, because we think of resiliency as bouncing back, I'm now starting to think more about where do we bounce back to, and is a word about adaptability. You know, I'm big on a lower energy future and the fact that we won't keep bouncing back to life as usual. And so maybe rather than talking about resilience, we should actually be talking about adaptability. So how we can actually successfully change. But I'll talk more
Yeah,
about that in my presentation.
great. Yeah, I can't wait.
I love that adaptability. I love that. I think we also talked about communication and how communication can really help mitigate anxiety and fear, and also maybe help delegate roles and responsibilities, or even, letting ones figure out a plan. I really liked how Justina talked about how the community that she lives in already has practices. Like if somebody breaks something, that the community comes together and maybe tries to help fix whatever was broken, and that they already are on that kind of community space. And being able to already be in practice of what that looks like, whether that's recovery or adapting or fixing, I think goes into that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that naming. How there's already practices within Justina's community about what happens when something goes wrong, you know? Um, awesome. Justina, anything you wanted to share?
Probably, yeah, that's what I think from what we were talking was that resilience is just more like we were talking about, like that making that connection to connect with others, and despite of the situation. And from like stories we share, it looks like if it's more like towards a hardship of like more difficult experience or challenging, humans are easier to gather and stand together. And when it's too, let's say, too nice and sweet, sometimes they can be caught up into like looking at the negative things, or like cut up, oh, he does this or she does that. And but when it's that that challenge, that they just standing together, so that making connection. So probably that's also makes me think about like how we can take that experience into that this day to day, that even nothing is happening, we can feel walk towards connecting than dividing ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's really beautiful. And a word that comes up for me as I was listening to you share, Justina, is about solidarity, and being able to cultivate and activate that solidarity within the collective. You know, not in response to an earthquake or a fire or a flood, but what might we do in our everyday lives? Ksenia, you're totally all good. At the speed of well-being. Come and go as you need to. But did you want to share something into the group?
But when COVID hit, I didn't know anybody, and it was a bad time to make connections. And ironically, like truly the worst time to be making connections when you're literally not supposed to talk to people. And I live in earthquake country, so for the next thing that happens, inevitably, I want to feel like I have some basic level of like connection and trust with neighbors. Um, and not have to do that after something already happens.
Yeah.
So that's top of mind for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love it. Oh, these are fantastic. Yep, Robert, you're signing off. You're on mute.
I was just one thing that popped in my head before I take off, and that is in resilience. I go back to like the practical thing. You say, what tools do you have? But for a community to be resilient, when we talk about in the Rotary clubs, is how big and deep is your toolbox? Other than your physical tools, do you have members with communication skills and computer skills and communication skills and physical skills? And your resilience comes from how complete, how big and deep can your resilience toolbox be made by your community, and having all the resources of everybody combined into this toolbox so you're really functional as a resilient community. It's just something that we deal with in Rotary stuff.
Yeah. Lessons to pull from everywhere, right? It's so true. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Okay, I feel like this is a really perfect time to move into a little bit of presentation and story sharing. What do you reckon, Shani?
I'm keen as mustard.
Shani is keen as mustard. She's ready to go.
If they have Keen's mustard in America, they may not know what I'm talking about.
No, it's spicy.
Keen's is a brand of mustard. They were keen as mustard.
Keen as mustard. I got it. I got you. And then all the Americans maybe learn something on the call. So that's great.
And everyone under no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway.
Cool. So for this story sharing part, what we're going to do is Shani's going to share her story of her community, and then I'll share a little bit about mine. And then from there, we'll kind of flow into questions and discussions as sort of the last part of the call. So I expect these presentations will go probably up until the top of the hour, or for the next 20 minutes if you're on a half-hour time zone. And Shani, if you're ready to go, I'm really happy to hand the floor to you.
Great. What I'm going to challenge you to do while I'm talking, if you've got pen and paper there, is to just write down one thought and maybe one question as I'm going along. So something that comes up as a thought and goes, oh my God, I've never thought of that, or something that comes up as an actual question. So as I'm going through. Now, luckily, with Alex, I already got the opportunity to start talking about this, but my background in this area comes from thinking about a lower energy future. So I've got a little graph there from David Holmgren where we talk about 4 potential reactions, I suppose, to this industrial creative descent that we're going to need to have. One is a techno fantasy where we're all going to be driving along in Elon Musk cars and everything will be fine. A green tech stability where we are able to transition to renewables quite easily and things continue much as they are. We have a crash where things are really bad and then we gradually actually build ourselves up again to create a more realistic future. Or we have this creative descent, this earth stewardship, permaculture type situation. So on my worst days, I think that red line is where we're looking at. And on my best days and the work that I do is all towards trying to have that creative descent. So I've been really influenced by a book called Retro Suburbia. It was written by David Holmgren, who's the co-founder of permaculture. And in it, he talks about the ways we can retrofit our suburbs for a resilient future. And he's got chapters on bushfire and storm mitigation. But he also talks about your own personal preparedness and also the preparedness of your community in suburbia. So my partner and I started with ourselves, I suppose. This is a picture of our pantry. So we store 3 months supply of food. We have a water supply. That means we can be off mains for water for about 10 months of the year, which is unusual
Shani,
in Australia. Yep.
Sorry to jump in. We're not seeing your slides move. So I wonder if we're just seeing the first one. So maybe it might be a different window that you're sharing. So you might need to stop sharing screen and then start again, or with this window that you're in. Yeah.
What have we got? What are you seeing now? Nothing.
Nothing. That's good. We're aligned.
What have you got now or nothing?
Yeah, still nothing.
Try again.
Yeah. And Ksenia, if you need to kind of just like go off video and listen in and look after your littles, then please go ahead and do that.
Have you
Yeah.
got me reading a book?
Yes. And if you, because it's quite small on the screen, so if, yeah, you could do that, or in the top right-hand corner, I know that's a share. What is, oh,
Yeah, I'm it like that because I think what happens is when I move to the slideshow, it doesn't pick it up for some reason. So so there's me reading that book I was talking about. There's our food. So the first thing we talk about is getting control of our own basics of life. So learning how to grow your own food. We've got a big power system here with batteries, which means we're independent of power. We're independent as we can for water. And then the other really important thing is to think about how vulnerable you are to some sort of climatic thing as well. So we're probably most prone to a big storm here. That would be the thing that would hit us. And in the same way, we talk about having enough power, having enough water, having enough food. The idea is that your geographic community is social capital. So it's actually about thinking of the support that is within around you. So 90% of the support in some sort of climate crisis comes within a kilometer of your house in that first peak time. So in the first 24 hours, the government does not come in and put your roof on. It's actually your next door neighbors within a kilometer of your house that are actually the ones helping you. So in the back of my mind with the work that we did in the West Beaky Bunch was always this, how would we go if there was some sort of crisis? So developing your graphic community from a strategic point of view is part of your preparation for a low future, for a lower energy future. It's one of the things that you might be in short supply of is that social capital, in the same way we might be in short supply of power, water, or anything else. So in the community that I live in, we are a very white middle-class community. We are high on a hill that has ocean views, so the houses are expensive, and we're about 5 blocks from the beach. So we are sitting pretty, and people are generally pretty comfortable here. Blocks are about 250 to 500 square meters in size. We've got a double-sized block, so we're quite big, but there's no obvious crisis. We're not in an earthquake zone. We're not in a bushfire zone. So we actually started doing a lot of stuff socially together. That was where we began. So you can sort of see the demographic in this photo. We've got a few young people, but a lot of people who are in their middle to elderly age. There is no cultural diversity where we are. It's pretty white middle class. There are quite a few kids in our area. You can't see them here because they were all off playing. And there's one little area that has some units with some cheaper places for rentals. But that's what we're looking at. We established ourselves in 2019. And as one of the first activities that we did, I ran a course called Living Smart. So it's a sort of an introduction to sustainable and more resilient living. Here we all are planting some seeds up, ready for winter. And we ran that from our living room. It covers things like transport, power, water, growing food, growing for biodiversity, having a healthy home, having a healthy lifestyle yourself, and then community is a big part of that as well. So we explored some of those topics over the 7 weeks of that program quite early on after we were established. But we hadn't talked at all at any of that point in time about any sort of crises. We had pretty good information systems set up. So we had a really good email list. We've got about 600 people on the email list. And we've got a street coordinator in every street that delivers flyers. So we have a flyer once a month that goes out as a community. Those are our main two communication channels. And we also have a Facebook page. That's got about, I think it's about 170 people on it. So not as many as those other two. But we had those communication channels that were set up so that we could organize long table dinners and felt making workshops and pizza nights and games nights and all of those fun things that we've been talking about doing as part of the course. So when the pandemic hit, it was like, oh shit, what are we actually going to do here? And we had a lady that stepped forward. This is not the little group, but we sat together in our back garden and said, just with 2 or 3 of us, what are we actually going to do? How can we support our community through this crisis? And that was one of the things I think that was a really deep learning for us, is that in some sort of crisis, you really need to have a different sort of leadership style. So we needed to have one person that said, I have some expertise in this area. I'm going to help you and I can help us plan a way forward. Because we have street coordinators that organize events and each person is in charge of that, we were quite used to that model. We didn't feel we needed to have a bigger meeting with people. We all knew Nicole. We all knew that she had that psych background and we all knew that she was perfectly placed to plan and to think about that. So it meant it could happen quite quickly. We established a emergency phone. She said, rather than this being someone's actual number, let's get a new phone with a new number so we can pass it around as people might get tired or might get sick. So the same person's not holding the emergency number. We sent it out to the email list and said, is there anyone willing to actually help with needs in our community? We wrote down a list of needs that we thought might happen, and we had 35 people that actually volunteered. So straight away, we had this sort of team of people. Then we actually wrote out a flyer. I couldn't find a copy of it. This is actually the pile of flyers that we've sent out over the last 5 years. But do you think I could find the COVID one? No. But anyway, so we made up a little flyer with that emergency number on it saying, keep this on your fridge. And then the street coordinators came, as they always do. I print the flyers off. They came to my house. They collected the flyers. They distributed them. And because they know the people in their community really well, they were then able to go and knock on doors of the elderly or someone who had a lot of kids or someone who they thought might be vulnerable as well. This is before the lockdown. And so we felt we were able to get that information out quite well to the people who needed it. We had a very short lockdown here in Western Australia. We're the most isolated city in the world, and so it wasn't a big issue for us. But a few things that came from that list, we had quite a few elderly people or people who were vulnerable in some way, and we set up a bit of a telephone tree. So this is one lady, Fiona, who volunteered to ring someone. It's funny, they started ringing once a day. They ended up ringing each other 3 or 4 times a day. He'd check in on her, she'd check in on him. And that was just nice because they were on their own, those people. These 2 little cherubs, their dad works in the mining industry and he had access to some something you can make hand sanitizer with. I can't remember it. So they actually made up little bottles of hand sanitizer, which was in pretty short supply. And had the West Beaky Bunch logo on it, and they distributed them around to houses in our community. Beautiful story. This is a musician, a local musician, and his daughter. And what we did one day, there's Nicole there sitting on the grass on the pavement there with the long hair and the pink top on. So she's the one who sort of got us all revved up and organized. And so he went round and he basically stopped, and we roamed the streets, and he stopped and took song requests. So just kind of thinking about people's, I suppose, social needs as well as their physical needs was something we were able to do. That initial response, I forgot to say, we were able to do all that. We had those flyers out, we had those doors knocked on within 24 hours. So much faster than any sort of governmental response is going to be able to be in those times. So it's meant that I'm feeling more confident that if something did happen here, we do have that. Mostly it's about, and it's interesting when Robert and Sharon were talking about communication channels. Those channels were established in good times to help with the bad times to come. And I had that in my mind, but nobody else realized that. Everyone's very proud of what happened over COVID, and feels a real affinity to the fact that we could do it again if we had to. So now our social and resource connections are actually there. And in the sort of 5 or 6 year journey of the West Beaky Bunch, we're now at a point where we're actually doing some training in some of those areas. So we've organized some first aid training for early next year. We've got a mental health first aid training course here in Australia. And so we're doing that in September this year. And I spent a long time trying to find someone who could actually talk to homeowners about getting their house fire ready, and was having no luck at all until I happened to strike up a conversation with a guy who newly moved into the neighborhood. And of course, he's a fireman. So the resources are actually there, sometimes in where you least expect them. I was talking to Alex about heat waves. One of the things we've done in preparation for heat waves is my partner and I have air conditioned one large room of our house. It's like a common room for the little community that we live in here. And we've air conditioned that one house, that one room, so that if people in our community need to get cool, or if there are other members of the West Beaky Bunch who don't have air conditioning, we can get heat waves of sort of 4 or 5 days of over 40. So that's the sort of preparation for us, but also something we're giving out into the wider community. And this year, for the first time, we're going to have a communal kind of building of something. And I'm hoping that will lead us to work together and in working together in a bigger sort of way. We're going to make a pizza oven, and that'll be the first thing that the West Beaky Bunch has sort of communally made and owned together. So that was me talking a lot. So there you go, Mel. I'm not too sure how my timing went.
You did great. You did so great. There is so much richness in that story. It's like amazing. And every time I hear it, I hear something new. So thanks very much for sharing your story, Shani. In terms of format, I think I'm going to flow straight into my presentation now. We'll do we'll have a little bit of space for questions, but I'd also love for us to have a bit of a chance for us to discuss how this might apply to our respective neighborhoods and those sorts of things. So we'll make sure that we have time for that before we wrap. So with that, I'll kind of jump in to my presentation, and I'll also see how I go time-wise. Okay, here you go. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is sort of like, what's my life philosophy, and why is this stuff important to me, and why am I doing NAP, and what is this all about? And my current working hypothesis is this is what I care about. I really want for us all to be able to ask for what we need, give what we can, and share as much as possible. So that's a little bit about me. This is me standing in front of a beautiful mural that one of our community members made, kind of depicting, the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. And it lives on the side of a hub building of ours in town. So where am I? I'm calling in from Australia in the state of Victoria. I live in a central part of the state in a rural kind of regional area on Dja country. The town I live in is called Castlemaine, and I live in the west end of that town. So we call ourselves the West End. A little bit about this sort of area, this bioregion and those sorts of things. It is very prone to bushfire, and as a result of the gold mining era, a lot of the soil and topsoil and land has sort of been decimated. So that also makes us quite vulnerable to floods and big rains as well. So Castlemaine town is 90 minutes out of Melbourne by car or train, which makes us really accessible. We've got about 6,500 population. Most of the folks here, it's essentially largely a working class and agricultural community. There are sort of shifts and changes. There's a little bit of generational aging sort of population here as well. So we have a lot of older folks, a lot of single person homes, and a lot of our businesses in town are also owned and run by people that are over 60. So that's a really interesting thing for us to keep in mind on. We have had a bit of a population boom from COVID and a little bit of the regional renaissance that seems to be happening more generally with some changes in the world of work and possibilities around remote work and those sorts of things. And an interesting stat that I thought was relevant here is that 40% of our residents have been here for less than 5 years. So what that means is whenever there is a big and sort of periodic or occasional event like a flood or a fire, up to almost half of us maybe have never been in something like that before and may not have like some of those base level understandings about what to do and how that works. The neighborhood that I just sort of refer to it as the West End is walkable into the main town centre, which is great. It's quite hilly, but it's sort of a densely populated suburban area that is surrounded by forest or by bush. So you can kind of see that almost everywhere around us are bushfire zones, and we are like a bushfire management zone, which means you need to think about that as you build and all of those sorts of things. Our neighbourhood network is called the West End Resilience Network. And this is a really sweet quote that I think sums up a lot from one of our residents. From food swaps to bushfire planning, a connected community is a safer, happier place to be. One of the things that I've really been thinking about is like, why do we do this stuff? Do we do this stuff because it's strategic and it's future focused and it's like the smart thing to do, thinking about our times? Or do we do this because this is a joyful, more connected, more healthy, more happy way to live? And I think for me, it really is about both. But as you're thinking about engaging different groups and hosting events and developing your networks, you might want to keep in mind those two sort of drivers that different people have going on for them in different ways. You know, it might be more one, more the other, that kind of thing. What else can I share about the West End Resilience Network? This group was formed in 2020 after a really severe bushfire season that did not affect this community. So folks kind of came together and were like, how can we be more connected in times like this? And it was actually right in time for COVID. So the group sort of came together to actually out of that, this is a strategic thing for us to do, to be able to be connected, adapt, survive and thrive in these sort of acute shocks and crises. And then that sort of really took off in COVID as it sort of used its communications channels and some of its activities to respond to all of those needs that came up. I'll talk a little bit about these pictures here. So there is like a little scout hall in our neighborhood. And the picture on the left is a sort of a socially distanced neighborhood gathering. We had a lot stricter lockdowns and distancing and having people over in our private homes, like a lot of restrictions about what you could and couldn't do in COVID. So this is one of the things, like going to a public park and kind of gathering, maybe not really gathering at 6 feet apart, was a way that we could connect and be connected. The picture in the middle is a picture of a big poster of our network that we bring to every kind of potluck or every event, and just sort of invite people to put like a little post-it sticky on where they are. We find this often sparks conversations, and it's a little bit of a low-tech, lo-fi alternative to kind of doing any kind of database or anything like that, where there's a few more complexities to navigate. But this is just a great way for people to get a picture of where are you, and oh yeah, I saw that, you've done something beautiful with your garden out the front recently, and that sort of thing. And the picture on the right is our neighbourhood getting together for a working bee on somebody's nature strip or verge. So that strip of land between the road and the front of people's houses, there's actually a group called Wilderhoods, which in NAP, I guess what I'm learning is we refer to as an affinity group. People that are interested in rewilding our nature strips and creating wildlife habitats and better water absorption and cooling our neighborhood, urban cooling. They do these working bees once a month outside a different nature strip. So that's a little bit about our network. There's about 440 houses. I've found another stat, Shani, I shared last, in our West End network, and we have various kind of communication channels, but our really main flagship one is a WhatsApp group that has about 180 members on it. So we essentially have that, and a way for people who aren't on WhatsApp to stay up to date with that. And yeah, that's sort of how we sort of coordinate our activities. What's next? I mentioned briefly that our climate here is we're in bushfire country. Also, one of the things that has been happening more recently is that we have fewer rainfall days, but bigger rains when that happens. So flash flooding is very much a reality for us. And because our soil and our land is so poor, the water absorption is really not very good. So also, the more people renovate and create paved courtyards and all of those sorts of things, there's sort of nowhere for the water to go. So we're noticing that more and more. Basically every time it rains here, there's something to respond to. There's needs that come up. So in October 2022, Victoria suffered a massive flooding event that devastated about 80% of our state, flooded. And in terms of the impacts on our neighbourhood, we had 3 streets in our neighbourhood where houses were inundated. We had a caravan park where there was a lot of migrant workers lived there. A lot of their vans were flooded or washed away. And it was really major. It was really major. This is a couple of years, I think 2.5 years on from when the West End Resilience Network was created. And the kind of, as Shani says, like the response was like immediate and so fast. And to be honest, there's still government funds that are like for that flood that are still like waiting to be spent, and we're in 2025. So in terms of speed of response, really your local neighborhood, your immediate neighborhood, just you cannot get better than. So the WhatsApp group got used for asks for help. Like, does anyone need help? We're willing and ready. Oh, look, our local businesses are getting flooded. If you've got a broom, head on down there and pitch in. It was also used to share information about which roads and bridges were crossable and not crossable, because we can get isolated here. And then in the recovery as well, it was used to share a lot of offers in terms of like free food, places to stay, all of these sorts of things. And we had some of these screenshots are of our closed WhatsApp group, but there were also posts, more general information and update posts that happened on like our Instagram sort of. So we were trying to also make certain information publicly available. In terms of like this business case around kind of disaster events and those sorts of things, currently Australia spends up to 27 times more on recovery than on resilience. And what we also know, what the data shows, is that for every dollar spent on disaster risk reduction and resilience building, there's like a $9.50 return on investment when a certain disaster or event occurs. So that's just a little stat that I looked up in preparation for this that feels really compelling on that strategic side of like why this stuff is important to do, this social cohesion stuff. Something that I want to talk about here is the YIMBY surprise. So something that we learned from the October 2022 floods. YIMBY stands for Yes in My Backyard. And it's a community composting initiative where community composters collect food scraps from 15 to 20 households on foot with a little trolley around their immediate neighborhood, and they create a big hot compost in their backyard. They do this because it diverts food scraps from landfill, it's good for the environment, it improves their soil, they get to grow awesome veggies with their amazing compost, and also because it's a nice thing to do in the neighborhood. The 2022 floods showed us that like the number one like outsized impact in terms of support in the floods were the YIMBY community composters, because they all knew 15 to 20 households. They knew their location, they knew who was living in that house, and they knew what the needs were. And so, you know, that was not strategic at all, but just emergent, that this group of really passionate composters ended up being like a real linchpin in being able to actually identify some of our more vulnerable people and people that actually needed evacuating or sandbagging and, you know, weren't able to do that. And they also were not connected into, say, the social networks to be able to ask for that. So that's like another layer to think about. I think that's me. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, in
Yay,
sum up,
Mel.
yay me. That's it. That's me. Yeah, I think my final thought was just thinking through like what's affinity group, special interest group. So we have like now we have an emergency planning working group that actually is like not that effective because I think people aren't that motivated or interested in it, even the people that signed up. So you know, what's an affinity group? What's a geographic kind of engagement? You're trying to bring people together because they live close together. And then what are you doing that from a strategic driver point of view versus what are you doing because it's just like a better way to live overall? Those are really the key things that I'm thinking about as I'm thinking about like what to put effort into creating for the neighborhood and why. Thanks.
Right. Yay.
Of gems there.
Want to take a breather there, Mel, for a sec? Do you want me to debrief that a bit, or are you happy to keep going?
I'm sort of curious about, with our last 15 minutes, I wondered, I have an idea about how we might use it. But maybe the group gets to decide because I like that. So we can kind of just all like, yeah, there's space and time for questions. So I think we could have a few of those. I also really want for people to just have a chance to digest and reflect on, you know, what's come up when they're thinking about some of these things in their neighborhoods and their activities and what's one small thing that they can do. So I could put us into 2 groups of 3 in breakout rooms for a little while to kind of debrief and defrag, or we could just all stay together to do it.
I
Who
reckon,
has
Mel,
a
there's only
Shani?
I reckon there's only 4 of us. I reckon we can probably do it all, maybe finish off with a round of what we're planning to do.
Great. Yep. Do we have space for a couple of questions before that?
Yeah. Oh no, I was thinking that was the question. So yeah, let's do some thoughts and questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think thoughts and reflections from the presentation would be great. And we'll use our checkout round as like a opportunity to be like, what's one thing you could do in your neighborhood? Hmm.
Sharon's got a thought. Look at her.
I've got so many thoughts. Thank you, you two, for those presentations. I was just thinking, just interesting you saying about the emergency planning group not being very effective, because I just feel like fun has a lot to do with all of these connections, doesn't it? And sometimes that stuff is not so much fun, but yet it's still, the fun stuff is preparing you for an emergency inadvertently, like by building connections. I was also thinking of a talk I heard ages ago by Nicole Foss, and that she was talking about when you prepare for these things, if something happens, you're kind of ready for it. So you're open and you're ready to move forward. Whereas if you don't prepare at all, it's like a closed down, shut down, no solutions, and you're not even outward looking, So all of this actually is really positive in that we will immediately be outward looking and looking for solutions.
She also uses the term psychological inoculation. The more you
What does that mean?
you have psychological inoculation, like you are prepared not just physically but psychologically for what might come. Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you. Alex, I'm really curious to hear from you.
Yeah. The thing that I was thinking from both of your presentations, mostly yours, Mel's, was like the organizing around all of these different things that are like doing different things like emergency planning or like renewable energy, like how to live sustainably, is interesting to me because like I do all of my organizing stuff for joy and for fun sorts of things. And like the people in my neighborhood association do a lot of things that are feel to me more like these things that you're doing that feel to me like administrative or like, their work, right, in some ways. And so I guess it's kind of interesting to me to see the ways that you all have succeeded in doing some of those different things and like get people to like be energized about it. And like I guess I'm realizing a little bit that like while I like to do these things that I like to do, some people actually do enjoy or like really care about emergency planning or renewable energies in a way that like, gets them pumped and they want to do that and like can bring other people, inspire other people to do it. And so I'm just thinking about how to do that now, or how to get those people to join me in doing that.
Really interesting, Alex, what you're saying. Sometimes it seems to be that people have 2 choices. We start with the thing that's going to energize them, and that's the threat. So we got a bushfire mitigation, we're going to start with that, or we start where the energy is in those social situations. And I've always said, start with the social. That's going to bring the joy and all of that to people. And then, as Sharon said, those things will sort of come from there. But I'm now seeing that it's about where the energy is. And your energy for one thing might be different to someone else's energy for something else. And thank God you're both doing the same thing in the same area. Like, isn't that fantastic? So it's not like it's one or the other, but it can be either both happening at the same time, or one or the other as an emphasis depending on where you are. And we don't have a bushfire threat, so it's no one would join an emergency response team in the neighborhood that I'm in. No one would. I couldn't even get come. So, anyway, that was my reflections on what you were saying.
You also kind of get different parts of the community with different interests, which is really handy. Melanie, I saw you came back on camera. Did you want to jump in?
Sure. And I shared on the group chat. There's this group in Arizona. Arizona's definitely desert, dealing with erosion and not very absorbent soil. I recently went to the town of Tombstone, Arizona, which is pretty famous for a shootout, and some movies have been made there and about it and the history of it. And I was in the museum and I read a little clip on the cattle industry, and it essentially said the cattle ranchers in maybe just like 4 years completely ate all the vegetation in a way that they had their first problems with flash flooding, droughts, and famine in 1890. And I'm like, so for 135 years, we've been victims to over cattle, management, not lack management of resources. I also was able to go on a tour there, and they were talking about farming and agriculture, and somebody asked, how could there be agriculture here? How could there be farming here? Because it's such a desert. And the guy responded and said, well, actually, we had a local recently do general shrub burning on his properties, and he had multiple lots. And so on one, he only did a burn once, and on the other one, he did it twice a year for a couple years. And all the natural grasses came back without even planting anything. So just what we could do on our own to cultivate the soil, and how we are unable to do it due to private property, fences. If you're prone to brush fires, you can't trust just anyone burning their land or what time they're going to do it, but that it literally is preventing us from being able to really cultivate an environment of more resources, or mitigating flood, or how we manage our water and all the other problems that come with it. So the Tucson Watershed Management Group has been trying to revitalize the rivers and streams and creek beds and work with private homeowners in creating a database of the really old water aquifers and irrigation ditches and drainage ditches, and bringing them back to life. And then also they created a manual that's in multiple languages, which I think is really awesome, for city people on how to actually build curbs and flood irrigation and drainages and medians in a way that it helps do something with flash floods, and so that it doesn't continually cause the problem, even as we're dealing with more pavement, more rooftops, more all the things that don't let water go where it needs to go. And so that's my 2 cents from listening.
Amazing. Thanks. I love that. Yeah, soil is key. I'm learning. Yeah.
Yeah, they say the whole of civilization is built on 6 inches of soil and the fact that it rains. Like, in the end, that's it.
Wow. Yeah. Justina, did you have any reflections to share? Do you want to jump in?
Something. I just was just generally like listening both of your stories. Because probably we kind of in the same social backgrounds, because we in Australia. So I was curious you're sharing and yeah, like yeah, also the place where I am, I was like trying to see, oh yeah, that's something interesting. This or maybe this is like I think Mel, you were talking about yeah, and also Shani, both like the age groups, and I thought, oh yeah, that's what Mel's saying. This is more like the age group I'm at, in a sense, in my neighborhood. There's a big piece, yeah. So I kind of yeah, and reflecting how yeah, how to make it certain things happen, and yeah, just nothing special, I think, to say. But I was
Mm.
just opening the link from Melanie about that water management group. It sounds very interesting. Yes,
Mm.
thank you.
Thanks, Justina. All right, well, it feels like we have a few minutes left, so it'd be great for us to have a checkout round to do that. But before we jump in, I'd just like to say thank you all for coming and engaging so richly. You obviously already bring so much context and experience of your own neighborhoods into this discussion. So I feel like it's been really rich. And Shani, also thank you for your presentation and sharing. There's so much there to dig into. There's just tons and tons. But as I bring us to a close, yeah, I'd like it to invite us to think about, like, just based on the last hour and a bit that we've spent together, sharing about and thinking about our neighborhoods and resilience or adaptation and what that kind of means for us in our context. It'd be wonderful for us to close out just like sharing like what's one small thing that you could do in your communities to progress its resilience, or maybe I'm going to add or adaptability, because I feel like we've started to wrap our heads around how they're different and how both are important. Yeah, let's do that.
I'm happy to start, Mel.
Thanks, Shani.
So for the last year, I've been trying to manifest a venue that we could have a first aid training course in for 10 people within the West Beaky Bunch, and it isn't going to happen. No one's got a big enough living room or whatever. So we are going to have to walk outside of the West Beaky Bunch and go somewhere else. So today I'm going to ring our local meeting place, which is a council-run venue, and talk to them about how much it is to hire that so that we can get that in play for our next round of activities. So that's my goal. I'm writing it on my to-do list for today. There we go.
Love that.
I've really enjoyed there being multiple people in Taos here that are doing this program, and the conversations that we're having together about what kind of action we want to do. Taos has many different circles, many different already community offerings, really strong thoughts about what resiliency means. But then we got to see some really interesting things, like during COVID, the government supply help that came was Delta Airlines excess supplies from their warehouse. And so the government sent us like plastic forks and dishes and just really random things, and like airplane blankets that probably are better used as construction materials than actually as a blanket. So we've really been able to see as a community how we are what we have to work with, and what our group can offer is we've been really talking more about how to do a more of an educational offering to help further it versus just having a social event or a fun night. So we're offering fun nights for ourselves and encouraging each other to participate in what's already been happening in the community, as we are brainstorming, maybe like hosting a water planting seminar or helping people connect in that way, or seed exchange or something to that effect.
Lovely. Thanks, Melanie.
I'll piggyback off that a bit. I'm thinking my action will be more about tapping into what skills people have in the community. So a bit like what Shani was talking about in her community, so just being able to share skills. And I think through those conversations with those people, you probably find out even more skills that exist within the community to be able to share.
Similarly, me, I'm going to find the person who has skills and interest and the fire for this sort of thing. And I think I know a guy who cares a lot about like public safety, so I'll see if this is up his alley. But if not, then we'll find someone else.
Love that.
Yeah.
Justina, what
Yes.
about you?
I think it's similar to just what everyone said before me, like yeah, trying to connect with different neighbors with different skills. And also, I have quite a lot still to get to know and knocking the doors. Because, like, I was reflecting about our today, the meeting, and it has, yeah, when sun is shining, yes, and the wind is blowing, everything is good. But then when suddenly you have other situations, um, like I was thinking, especially here, like in this small town we are living, like most of the people still eat food that is even not produced in this state. It's brought from so far away, and like just one aspect of like your life, which is basic survival. This place is there's no resilience around that. It's everything is from like the people are not empowered in that. And I was
Mhm.
reflecting on just the simplest aspect of that, and try to connect around that with neighbors here. Thank you.
I love that. One of the things that is on my to-do list is to just create a little like welcome to Castlemaine cuppa, so that once a week, people who are new to town can just come and have a cup of tea and get connected, I suppose. So that's the key thing that I find that I'm noticing I have energy for, like leaving this call. So that's mine. Thank you all so much for being such a great group to hear from.
Thanks.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Mel was sort of reined in to do this because the person who was planning to do it was unable to. So she's put something beautiful together with some lovely sharing in a really short amount of time. So I think a little round of applause for Mel as we finish up. Let's give her a high five.
Oh,
Yay!
Thanks, Mel.
thanks.
On you, Mel.
Yep. It was fun. I did have fun with you all. Cheers.